Hello, and a huge warm welcome to my guest today, Rachel Ballantyne, who I'm really excited to chat to about all the wonderful things that she does in the field of tutoring, research, and supporting young people with their learning. But before we get into that, I just want to tell you a little more about our guest. Rachel is an English teacher and 11 plus and 13 plus specialist tutor with 12 years of experience in teaching and 10 years in tutoring across all key stages. She holds an MA in education, a PGCE in English, and has qualified teacher status. She is currently working towards an Education Doctorate, specialising in the experiences of women working in education after motherhood, which sounds absolutely fascinating, and I can't wait to delve more into this today. She has a deep passion for literacy, GCSE and A-Level English, and supporting children's emotional development through storytelling, which is just beautiful. She has two boys, Eddy 4 and Ollie 2, and is a reluctant marathon runner and complete bookworm, which I can totally identify, the bookworm, not the marathon running. So it is my absolute pleasure to introduce Rachel today. How are you doing?
Hi, good morning. I'm really well, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's so exciting to connect and have a chat.
Not at all. It's absolutely our pleasure to have you on. So let's just start a little bit with your background. Like, how did you get into teaching? What drove that passion to want to help young people?
I'm not going to lie, I mostly went into teaching for the holidays. I've got a bit of a travel bug. No, no, it's way more wholesome than that, I promise. No, so I just love having the opportunity to help young people connect with literature. I was a really reluctant reader as a child.
Okay.
I was not diagnosed as dyslexic until I was 21. So I
Wow.
was always the kind of joker, the one trying to I'd rather get in trouble and have attention, negative attention, than have attention being drawn on me because I couldn't read the text aloud without stuff
Okay.
rereading the same line. So
Yeah.
I was a very reluctant reader. And nobody really, when I was a child, nobody stopped to just say, oh, well, why is Rachel misbehaving? Why is Rachel not focusing? And I don't think anybody stopped to ask or to think maybe it's because she's struggling with reading. So actually, now I have the opportunity to help young people access literature in a way that meets them where they are, be that graphic novels, be that audiobooks, be that nonfiction, so long as they are accessing literature in a way that makes them feel that they are connecting with stories and different worlds and ideas and attitudes that have been conveyed by the writer, I'm all for it.
It's so great, isn't it, that there are so many different kind of medias and formats that young people can access literature through now. Because I think like when I was younger and definitely kind of the older generation, it was very much like you read a text and that's kind of the only way you had access to it. And just there you've given so many different examples of being able to access it. And I think when you say things like graphic novels and things like that, there's a real misconception that that's not proper reading, and it's so not true, isn't it? Because the whole comprehension and image and illustration, that level of understanding a text in that way, it all feeds into it, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. And I think the literature has a really beautiful way of helping young people have a voice that isn't often heard. So you might have cultures that merge within society. You might have people who international students who've come to the UK from other places, and literature really gives kind of children an insight into other people's perspectives, and it's that cultural capital that they develop through literature they wouldn't necessarily have the opportunity to develop in school in the same four walls with the same class and the same form every single day. So what's amazing is that literature can transform children's perspectives and kind of broaden their horizons in ways that a lot of different aspects of teaching can't. So English teaching for me was something that always appealed, because I might not have connected with the words, but I connected with the characters and I connected with the stories,
Okay. Yeah.
and I connected with the storytellers, and I think that was amazing, because you can learn so much from somebody about their stories. So I think that's why I love literature.
Mhm. And I think it's beautiful that you say, you really wasn't into reading, back then, but it sounds like it was very much driven from the challenges that you found rather than not actually enjoying the process of reading and consuming literature. It was because you were struggling. And I love what you say about kind of, you would rather have that negative um acknowledgement in that way, attention, yeah, in that way. And I think so many young people have that, and we know, I've done a lot of research, and a lot of my qualification is in kind of child development, things like that, and we know that all behavior is communication, and it's finding, and you touched upon it there, nobody said, oh, why is Rachel doing this? It's just, let's kind of fix that behavior. But actually you were acting out because you were finding something challenging and you wanted to do it. So I think it's lovely that you've turned it into a career. You've turned it around and gone, do you know what? I'm going to help those kids that struggle the same as I did. And it's really lovely to hear when that happens, and that, that experience. Because what was your experience of school like? You've touched upon it there in terms of, struggling in that, but kind of generally, did you enjoy school as a child?
I think so I moved around a couple of times because my dad was a chief inspector in the police, and he would have a posting at a different locality. So yeah, I think I did enjoy school. I was never I was kind of like shoehorned into a grammar school, an all-girls grammar school, 11 plus, tutoring from year 3 to make sure I got into the grammar school. The problem with growing up in Kent was that, I mean, it was beautiful and Kent's gorgeous, but it was either grammar school, kind of church school, or comprehensive. And the comprehensive schools weren't at the same academic level or have the same level of provision as the grammar schools. So there was a lot of pressure to get into a grammar school, kind of whether or not that was the best fit for the child. And I was never the cleverest child. I was never like the best at anything, which I was never sporty. I was never super academic. I was just kind of a cruiser, kind of middle of the road cruiser. So I kind of lent on being naughty, because that was kind of how I got attention. So yeah, I loved school, but I could see that I was hard work like as a child. So I totally relate when a parent comes to me at parents' evening, is like, oh, like, Rosie is, just think of a name, like Rosie is really lazy and I just can't get her to do her work. I'm like, oh, okay, right. Well, let's think about why Rosie's like presenting as lazy. Why is she presenting in this way? Is there something else going on? Do we need to ask questions? Has anybody even asked Rosie like what she thinks? And often the children haven't had a voice, and I've kind of being I mean, I've never had a problem being vocal, but it's more like giving other people the opportunity to speak. It's a skill that I've tried to work on over the last 12 15 years of practice, and I think that's what I tried to do with my thesis. So a lot of the time, particularly during the pandemic, I had my first baby during a pandemic, and there was very little support. There was very little in-person support. Like I had to go to all of my maternity appointments on my own. Tragically, I had a friend who went to one of her appointments to find out that she had miscarried, and the baby had died, and she had to go on her own because during the pandemic she couldn't go with her partner. And horrific stories, and so many women have kind of suffered from postnatal depression after having a baby during lockdown. So even though I started my PhD pre-lockdown, I started it in 2018. I took 3 years out to have my children, and during that time I completely rewrote my ethics submission and the premise of my thesis, because I was always looking at women's experience of working in education, but post-motherhood really kind of struck a nerve with me, because I had postnatal depression. I experienced quite a lot of negative I had quite a few negative experiences going back into the classroom after having both of my children.
Okay.
And I think giving a voice to people who have experienced like maternity discrimination or just any sort of negative attention having become a mother, I think is really powerful, particularly in like today's society, where teacher retention and recruitment is so hard. And
Yeah.
the largest group of women leaving teaching are aged 30 to 39. And there hasn't been any specific research into, so the government made a kind of sweeping statement that it was due to motherhood. And it's like, are you sure all women leaving aged 30 to 39 is just because they're becoming mothers? And it's sort of assumptions that politicians and kind of policy writers have made that haven't actually asked mums. We haven't actually asked mums what support they need, or what they think would be helpful. And it's not just part-time, it's not just part-time contracts, and it's not just flexible working. It's, well, sometimes we need a bit more understanding as to why mums need to cancel their need to kind of leave a lesson mid-lesson because their baby is sick, or they need somewhere other than the toilets to pump breast milk. Like, yes. It's all of these things, there are so many assumptions around women when they become mothers that they're suddenly not capable of being a teacher anymore. And I think it's Joanne Beresford, I can't pronounce her name, but she led Pregnant Then Screwed for the longest time.
Yeah.
And she it's like, I can't remember what she said, but she said something along the lines of, I've had a baby, not a lobotomy. And it's like, it's true. You go back to work and it's suddenly like, oh, well, you're going to put your baby first, aren't you? Like, you're not going to be, you don't want that promotion, it'll just take up too much time. Or, oh, we can't ask Rachel to lead that trip because it's on the day off that she would normally be spending with her son. Or, it's all these assumptions that are made around mothers and motherhood and teaching that are so damaging to women. And I'm trying to break those stigmas, and I'm trying to bring a lot of those issues into conversation and help schools. There are a lot of policies that exist to support working mothers, but schools don't necessarily have the resources or capacity to implement them to help mothers. So I'm actually in the process of writing chapter 6 of my thesis at the moment, and it's looking at what policies do exist, the vignettes that I've written based on these women's experiences, composite vignettes, and how I can try and work with schools to enable them to support mothers more effectively. So it's anything anybody can do to help schools retain talent is worthwhile doing, in my book.
I completely agree. And I think we are losing so many valuable teachers, aren't we? Precisely for this reason. Do you think that, because you touched upon policy there, and it's really interesting because I've worked with colleagues on kind of something similar in terms of looking at supporting people who have care responsibilities in the workplace, and that care responsibility could be being a parent to young children, or it could be to elderly parents, a sick relative, or whoever. And something that I very much saw was, the policies are there, but there's a lot of kind of tokenistic elements to it of, yes, we're acknowledging this and this is in the policy, but the practical application of that in practice doesn't always kind of transpire across, does it? Is that what you're finding also with the policies that you're looking at?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was working with a school, and they've implemented a new wellbeing policy. Brilliant. They're focusing on education around menopause. They're focusing on how they can training mental health first aiders. Brilliant. Yeah. On paper, it looks fantastic. But when I asked the question, okay, but how many people have used those services? How many people have attended those workshops on menopause, education around menopause? How many people have spoken to a mental health first aider? How do you check that the mental health first aider is maintaining their professional development and keeping in touch with all of the updates with policy? And they said, oh, it's just really hard to monitor. It's really hard to manage. It's just a lot of, it's a lot of tick boxing exercises, but actually meaningful impact is so difficult to, I mean, it's not for researchers. They know how to track these things. They know how to measure impact and efficacy of implementing policy, but schools aren't, they're not run by researchers. They're run, often independent schools are run by business people, who they do an amazing job, do not get me wrong, and they're amazing and incredible practitioners and leaders and managers. But actually looking at the impact and how effective the implementation of these policies is and can be is seriously lacking. And I think it's scary. I think, you know, if we actually spent more time and energy and money on researching how to actually support both men, women, mums, dads, parents generally in schools, we would have, I genuinely feel we would be able to recruit and retain teachers better. I just think there's something missing, something fundamental missing, and it needs work. So
what are you hoping comes out of the research that you're doing in terms of how are you planning to use it to better support the schools?
So at the moment, it's just having those conversations with school leaders. I'm in conversation with a few schools at the moment where I'm going to be doing some keynote speaking at their CPD stuff, which is really exciting. Working with senior leadership teams, talking about my research, looking at the outcomes from my research, the policies that exist, how they're currently implementing the policies, how they working with, I've got 2 conversations lined up with HR departments to see how they are managing maternity leave for teachers, and how that links to different dates so obviously maternity leave statutory guidelines were not written around teaching specifically. So a lot of teachers aim to have children in kind of before Christmas, so September, October time, and then they might return. This is exactly what I did. They might return to work on like the 1st of July and go back for a couple of days and then be off for the summer. So it's all like calculated, but so many people don't have that luxury. And I think a lot of schools don't understand the nuances of shared maternity leave, shared maternity paternity leave, policies that exist there. There's also interesting research around if a woman is signed off sick up to, I think, 33 weeks of gestation, they automatically start maternity leave, I think. And there's nuances around times and dates and due dates. Anyway, It's very complicated, but
sounds it.
Yeah. But again, I don't know all of the intricacies. I need to do some research into it before I have these conversations. But the fact that the minutiae is so of the almost the terms and conditions are written so small that it's such a tiny font that for schools to follow them and to make the most of them is really hard. And there's nobody checking that flexible working policies are being implemented consistently across state schools, private schools, primary schools, secondary schools, and paternity leave. So I was really lucky. My husband works for Google and he was given 4 months full pay paternity when I had both of my children, which is unheard of. It's amazing. Yeah. And it was just amazing because my husband could actually connect with my son. He sat and I got actual sleep where my husband could bottle feed my son if I was sleeping and I had expressed milk. And the bond that he has with his children and I'm not saying that it's only because of the 4 months paternity leave, but it certainly helped. And he has an incredible relationship and bond with my sons that, in the middle of the night, they're often more likely to call out for daddy than mummy, which breaks my heart slightly. But actually,
Oh,
it's a real testament to
yes.
his devotion as a dad and their trust and love for him. So it's really good. But I think if more employers could support dads as much as they do mums, and 2 weeks leave just isn't sufficient, particularly for mums who are really struggling. If their husband only gets, or partner, sorry, only gets 2 weeks off, and they've got postnatal depression, and it's very jarring. So I think a lot of work needs to be done.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, isn't it, that I don't think there's an overnight answer. As with a lot of different sectors and especially education, there are so many changes that need to happen, developments that need to be happening. We've changed as a society so much over the years, but it's not an overnight answer. But I mean, anyone who follows ReCap knows that, the core of everything that we do is research based and research informed. And I'm really passionate about the importance of research in big changes that need to happen. We need, and you touched upon it there earlier when you said about, measuring the impact of something. It's all well and good having things in place to say, yes, I'm ticking that box that I am empowering my workers and I am providing them this. And we're putting on all of these, workshops, and we've got a mental health first aider, using your example. Amazing. But are they being used? Are they being accessed? Because if not, it's a waste of time. Exactly. So it's really important to do these research projects and to feed into the literature around these topics so that we can work out actually what is the best way to approach this. Is it working? Why isn't it working? What can we do to change it and develop on? So, your research sounds amazing and very much needed. So I'm looking forward to kind of hearing how it progresses. Do you have a kind of time frame? Do you know when you're going to be completing, or is it just kind of like see how it goes, which is very much like mine?
My supervisors have told me to slow down. I think they reviewed chapter 4 and said, "Oh, you've written too quickly. You need to actually stop, read around a little more." And I was like, "No, I hear you. That's fine." I think it was projected to be submitted first week of June, but it's probably likely end of July at this point.
This year.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Excellent.
Yeah. I mean, I finished all my research by kind of middle of February. So I've been writing it up and creating the vignettes and such. And it's been really, really, really interesting. And I think there's a lot of scope for, I mean, I really wish I had more time, because I would love to incorporate dads and fathers into my research. But again, resources are limited. So there's only so much we can do. But future research, there's so much scope for general parent support for parents in education, and things that schools can do to support mums and dads.
Do you find, so you've spoken specifically about working in education after parenthood or motherhood in schools, but obviously you have come out of that system now, and we'll talk about your journey to starting your company in a moment. But do you think that there's also the need to there are a lot of people kind of going back into education but doing it in a different way that isn't necessarily back in the school system?
Yeah, I think certainly I've been working with Mike Lehman, who is the classroom exit coach, and he taught me the phrase, a lot of teachers leave teaching, spend more time on education, which I love, because it's so true. The amount of time that we spend on paperwork, kind of jumping through the next hoop, embedding principles that are now fashionable again, writing reports, it's just bonkers. The amount of evenings and weekends that we have to are above and beyond sort of hours that we give to teaching, it just doesn't equate to positive balancing of responsibilities as a parent. So a lot of people that I have worked with and that I know Mike has worked with are approaching education differently. So they've not necessarily gone back into the classroom, but they are either tutoring. They I think teaching gives you a lot of transferable skills. You know, we're amazing project managers, amazing organizers, very efficient. We work well under pressure and to deadlines. Good at handling crowd management, crowd control. And there are so many transferable skills that I think teachers have incredible transferable skills, but I think a lot of teachers are a bit afraid that they've only ever applied for a job through TES or directly through a school's website. And there's so much scope for application of those transferable skills into other sectors. And it's kind of enabling teachers to do that with confidence that I think needs work. But a lot of parents, and I think one thing my research did highlight was that a lot of teachers return to teaching after having a baby, and they thrive. They absolutely thrive in the classroom because they've adapted their teaching in response to being a parent. They're more compassionate towards their pupils' needs. They are more understanding if a child emails them and says, I haven't submitted my homework because I had X, Y, and Z commitments. They're not instantly given a detention. They are given like more understanding. And they a lot of teachers that I've worked with post motherhood, or parenthood, they can then talk to the parents on a different level. They understand, they have greater insights into what it means to be a parent, but also they can see it from different perspectives. So it really enriches their practice. And interestingly, my research is indicating that a lot of several of the teachers that I worked with, participants in the research, they started out their teaching careers with high aspirations of going into management and climbing that greasy pole, but then when they had a child, their perspective and their priorities completely shifted. They no longer craved that recognition or the desire to reach the top of become a head teacher or an ISI inspector or whatever. They just wanted to be a classroom teacher. I say just, but they really started enjoying what they did, and their vocation of being a teacher became clearer, and it reignited a passion for something that they want to do, and it's completely transformed their perspective, and they fall in love with teaching again, and that's amazing. So it's I want to say double-edged sword, but it's like, I think I literally had a conversation with an agent a couple of days ago, a Chinese agent, about working with mothers, and how on one hand you get highly talented, experienced professionals, you get people who are hugely compassionate for the students they work with, the teachers their teammates. They work really well under pressure, but at the same time their family will come first, and they will drop whatever they're doing at the drop of a hat, because family comes first. And if they invest in their team are their greatest asset. Their students will come and go, but their teachers are their true value. They have to invest in their teachers, and if their teachers feel supported and trusted, they will stick around, and they will have the best sustainable relationships with incredible longevity. But I think parents also know when to kind of move on and see, oh, this isn't working. If they don't feel appreciated, they from my experience and from a lot of the teachers I've worked with, they realize that that workplace just isn't for them, or that agent isn't for them, and that's absolutely fine. So it's really interesting working with parents, and it does come with a lot of risks for a lot of in a lot of ways, because the parent won't necessarily prioritize the business, they'll prioritize the child, but that's not always going to be the case. So it's swings and roundabouts.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to acknowledge all of the positives that you've just spoken about there. You know, we're very much, we hear so much about, you know, how stressful and challenging the teaching profession is, which, you know, 100% it is, and how retention is really hard and all of the crisis that goes on and everything. And we hear so much about that. There's less of a focus of actually how amazing it is to have parents in the workforce and those transferable skills. And that's really interesting what you say about that shift in perspective of actually where does their value come from now from their perspective. You know, it's no longer climbing that ladder of leadership, but actually the importance of what they're doing in that classroom with their pupils, and that love, fostering that love of learning and helping those particular students to thrive, and that passion and drive that comes from being a parent as well. I think it's really lost, isn't it? Because we focus so much on the challenges, because we have to, because the challenges need to be addressed, they need to be fixed. But we do tend to lose sight a little bit of actually how amazing and the skill set that being a parent can bring to a job like that. And I think the comment that you made about like that team around the employee, because actually building the right team of support, having contingencies in place, you know, if that individual does have to suddenly drop things and leave, it's not, I don't think it should be, you know, we're going to penalise that individual because they've had to go and deal with a family emergency or what have you. As a leader, it should be, right, what contingency do I have in place, you know, should that happen? And we come together as a team. And if you foster that environment, you're going to get people putting more into their job with you. But again, you know, as we've said, these things can't be fixed overnight. And we have to hear the voices through the research and find out what is going to make people not just want to stay into teaching, but physically be able to stay in there. But I want to move on now and talk about Edify and Empowering Tutoring. This is your company that you've set up. So you now work as a tutor, which is fantastic. So what was your journey to setting up your tutoring business, and where do you want to go with it? What's the dream?
So good question. I've actually, since we last spoke, set up another company, a joint venture with a business partner called Lauren Airy, called Lara, which is tuition and consultancy, which is working with international students, helping bridge their journey from primarily mainland China, Hong Kong and Taiwan to the UK. I handle the tutoring side, so I recruit teachers and support the tuition of the children that we work with, and Lauren works with the admissions to help them attain places at some of the top international schools in the country. I am maintaining Edify, so it's all shifted in the last 3 months. Edify and Empower started out as me just being a one-woman band, tutoring. You know, I think I've got 20 something clients now that I tutor mostly from my own home. I wanted my Eddy, he's 4, he starts school in September. My husband travels all over the world with work. I needed to be present. I was driving an hour each way to work. I wasn't present for my boys. Now I can be present for my boys, and I can pick them up and I can take them to school. So tutoring to begin with was a way of me being more present for my family.
Yeah.
But it soon became clear that a lot of parents want that flexibility. And so Edify and Empower. Edify means to build up. and to grow and to strengthen. And a lot of parents who I have worked with historically and that I know within parent circles want the flexibility that tutoring brings. And it can be quite lucrative, particularly when it's word of mouth referrals. And actually Edify is now sort of morphing into more a collective of like-minded teachers, parents primarily, who want to tutor their subject and teach their subject, primarily daytime hours. So hence we're working kind of with the East Asian market. But the students that we work with are looking for tuition during the UK kind of daytime. So during the holidays, for example, when the parents aren't in the classroom, they can work with us to do some kind of daytime tutoring. It works really nicely that way. But Edify and Empower it's as I said, it's a collective of teachers, and the collective itself isn't commission based. It's based on referrals. So in order to support the mums and dads who are tutoring within the collective, part of our culture is that if somebody, for example, can't make one of their tutoring sessions, we can refer somebody else within the collective to substitute for that tutor.
Yeah.
Because if tutors are solo, they don't necessarily have people to cover for them through sickness or whatever. So we've got that built into our culture. We also have a huge bank of curated resources that are free to access by the teachers in the Edify collective. They can then either add to, download, curate their own resources within that space, so that they can share with other teachers. Edify is also, it has a social element. So every month, teachers meet up with different interests. So there's the running group. So we've got a group of teacher parents who like running. So once a month or once every other month, we meet up and we go for a run and we have coffee. We have a coffee group called Tea and Tantrums where
Love that.
in the holidays we meet up and we talk about our toddlers and their tantrums, and we drink tea or wine.
It's not tantrums from the teachers then.
No. Well, it might be on occasion. But it's really, we also now have a charity arm where we work with a company based in Tanzania called TZ Rising, who I'm running the London Marathon for. They support women's education in Tanzania, enable women and young people to access university education and functional skills and functional English. So I'm actually going out to Tanzania in August to climb Kilimanjaro to raise money for the charity, but I'm also spending 6 days in the community helping develop women's English skills. But money from that kind of the Edify collective goes towards that charity. So we have that kind of outreach as well. So it's more than just tutoring. Not that tutoring isn't just anything, tutoring's huge, but I really wanted Edify to be more and to give back to parents, to give back to education, because I think the other thing that I've noticed with a lot of parents is that they're very generous people, and they're more likely to give their time than their money, because time is more valuable to them because they have less of it. So when they do give their time, it means so much, and often and to see the gratitude of the people we work with is incredible. The young women, there's an in-country in Tanzania representative of the charity called Inno, and he sent a voice note after I hiked from London to Brighton last August for the charity, and he sent this beautiful heartfelt video just saying, you've changed our lives, you are family, we will never be able to repay you, but you are our family, you mean everything to us, you've changed our lives in ways that we cannot express, and that broke my heart and thought, right, okay, when we've never met in person. I mean, I will be meeting them in August, but we've never met in person, and you've referred to me as part of your family, and that's really the core of what I want Edify to be. It's that family. It's appreciating parents and educators and teachers and practitioners, and empowering them to help people learn, but also empower them to kind of flourish in teaching after parenthood. So it's I mean, we all have bills to pay, which is why we're doing Lara, to try and to earn money to pay the bills. But Edify is morphing and moving and changing into something that is more impactful. It's more than money. It's that spirit and that family values and the culture and the ethos that that I think teachers and parents, they will hopefully will enable them to thrive. So that's kind of where we're heading.
It sounds amazing, and it's so important to talk about these things, because seeing how this is morphing is incredible, and the real social value that it's going to bring, I think, is so much more. And I mean, you're going to have to come back after you've been over and done the work that you've done over there and that, and tell us how it goes, because I would definitely be following this and be keen to find out, because it sounds amazing, the work that you're doing, and it sounds like it's continually growing, which is great. So best of luck with that. It's incredible, the work that you're doing. And it's nice that it really all kind of encompasses that learning element as well, and supporting not just the teachers but the learning and education, not just here but elsewhere as well, which is great. I just want to talk a little bit about how we can support parents, support their young people with kind of learning. And I know that you've got some expertise in kind of exam preparation and like entrance exams, GCSEs and things like that. Do you have any kind of tips for parents that can help them support their young people when approaching exams? Because we will be approaching exam season very soon, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it almost sounds quite counterintuitive, but I think trust your young people. I think ask your young people what support they need, what support they feel they need. A lot of parents see, their mock results, and they panic. They go into panic mode, and they see their child got a D or a 3 or a 4 in their GCSE maths or English, and they suddenly panic, book a tutor to try and get them through, drag them through kicking and screaming against their will more often than not. But actually, I think we need to ask the young people what they feel like they need. And when the young person feels empowered and heard, they're more likely to commit to whatever process that you work together to create. So just, I know it sounds really silly, but ask your young person, what support do they need? What are they struggling with? How do they feel? Because it might surprise you.
I think that's such a valid point, isn't it? And we were just speaking about, hearing the voices of parents and teachers, things like that. So why would it be any different for our young people as well? We don't give, I say this all the time to people I speak to, we don't give enough credit to our young people, do we? They're actually so much more capable than we kind of allow them to be sometimes. But that's really hard sometimes as a parent, when the outcome that you want to get, or where your young person wants to get to, so you just want to help facilitate that. And sometimes it can be easy to just kind of throw some things in place, when actually you're right, if a young person is engaged in the learning, that outcome is going to be so much easier to achieve. What do you think is the kind of biggest challenge for young people in terms of exams, in your experience?
I think often it's the prescriptive nature of, particularly for English, I think it's the texts that the children are forced to study. A lot of the literature that they're reading is outdated, and they can't relate to any of the themes within them. I've been teaching a young person who's studying a new Edexcel It's the Edexcel 2.0 English Literature GCSE. And there's a Mallory Blackman on the book on the syllabus called Boys Don't Cry. And it's about a young single dad at the turn of the millennium. And there's really interesting themes in it, like sexuality and being a single parent and race. And it already feels outdated in a lot of ways because it's, it's set 20 odd years ago. And if we think that that feels outdated, how on earth are children meant to be accessing ideas, themes, attitudes in Pride and Prejudice, or, even Lord of the Flies? I think a lot of the literature is outdated. It seems outdated for the children that we are teaching. So it's imperative to find a way for that young person to connect with something within the literature, maybe even if it's an abstract feeling or an emotion or a character's perspective on something that they can relate to. It's really tapping into where that young person is and something within the literature to enable them to relate to it and to garner insight into it, into the attitudes and values being conveyed. I think a lot of the time children feel completely turned off by Shakespeare, and I don't blame them. It's really hard to understand a lot of what's going on.
A lot of thinking, isn't it, involved in that sort of prose?
So I think actually, if you can understand Macbeth's inner conflict, because he has to choose, ambition, or he's driven to choose ambition, and rather than seeing, humanity is just good or bad, it's more complicated than that. All humans are primitive at the core, led by their animalistic desires and drives, and then on the outside, society has required them to paint on a veneer of values and attitudes and a performance, a social performance that they have to maintain. I think if you can kind of try and get children to relate and to understand on that level, I think they will connect. They're more likely to connect with the words that the writer is using, the techniques and the methods that the writer is using in the literature. I think that's probably my key advice.
Do you think that comes down to the literature that's being provided or the way in which it's being taught?
I think it depends. It's case by case. I think a lot of teachers are scared to deviate from the mark scheme.
Yeah.
Try and get children to love literature because they are scared that if they spend any time doing that, they're not going to teach the children how to pass the exam. And I think again, that's a huge turn off to children, and it's also a huge amount of pressure put on teachers. So actually spending the first couple of lessons before you start teaching the text to actually invest in the context and the ideas and the attitudes and values being conveyed, seeing it as something consciously constructed, realizing that characters aren't real people, and looking at the writer's methods becomes so much easier when the children have a better understanding of the crux of the novel, I think. And it might sound counterintuitive to a teacher who says, we've got so much to cover in such a short space of time, but the value to that is huge, and it can be a game changer.
Interesting. Okay. And so my other question around exams that I was really interested in was does your approach differ between an entrance exam and a GCSE type exam?
Yeah, definitely. So when we've got young people studying for entrance, 11 and 13 plus, we tend to use a system. It's more intense, it's shorter. We might use Planet Bofa or Atom Learning. And it's like a short-term subscription where the children repetitively, and it is repetitive, but they follow the, test, practice, retest method of understanding the content of these papers. And it's very different from GCSE. I think GCSE is where the children are a bit older and they have greater cultural capital that they can then apply to understanding the writer's meaning. So it's a different skill set. But fundamentally, the child has got to want to do it, because you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make it take. So.
Do you find that happens a lot with it's something that the parents really want the child to do, but obviously as you're working with the young person, you can see that engagement isn't there?
I think it really depends. Sometimes there's a mismatch of expectation and reality. So the parents might have an expectation of their child, which is it potentially exceeds the child's natural aptitude. So they might have their heart set on a particular school because of its name and its reputation, rather than what's best for the child. So I think that can be quite a tricky conversation to have with a parent. But again, that's a building trust. So if the parent trusts you and understands your approach and trusts that you have the child's best interests at heart, they will listen and hear you. Not 100% of the time, but they're more likely to listen and respect your opinion.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important there, what you've said, because we kind of see tuition as being that relationship between tutor and student, but actually you need to have that strong relationship with the parents as well, don't you? So I think that's really key to understand, that your role actually isn't just getting that student through an exam, but it's building that trust and that relationship between the whole family, which I imagine takes a lot of time as well.
I think it really is. It's an investment in not just the child's, because often you're picking up the pieces. So I've tutored quite a few children who are homeschooled, and they don't attend school for a multitude of reasons, be it health or experiences of the classroom, or just through choice. And you're often kind of picking up the pieces of a child who might have PTSD, for example, or you have to practice trauma-informed teaching, and just being really mindful of children and the experiences that they have had and things that they might have faced or seen, and just being aware of that child. Again, it comes down to giving them the voice. So, being very open and communicative, both with the child and the parent. And yeah.
No, I completely agree.
I think
there's so much depth, isn't there? I think it's easy to think of something like tutoring as being very kind of surface level. It's, teaching to the test, ensuring that you can pass and get the grades that you need. But actually, the level of depth is incredible. How can people get in touch with you, work with you? Are your books open? Is this something that people can reach out to you about?
Yeah, I'm always up for a 15-minute discovery call. I'm very happy to do that. I have a Tidy Cal that I'm very happy to send the link if people want to have a chat with me. I'm actually currently full, but my diary is chocker. But we are in the process of recruiting new teachers to join Lara, and we'll be officially launching the first or second week of May. So hopefully that will enable us to work with more young people, to empower them and to build them up, and teachers in the same way.
Brilliant. So will there be a website, or are you on social media for that particular thing?
We're on all socials. The website is under construction as we speak. I just received a message about it. So
I love a website development.
I know, it's all very exciting. We have a new CRM, which is everything under one roof, apparently.
Amazing.
Out of my depth. It's, I'm a classroom teacher, not a technician. We're getting there.
Just trying to bring everything together and be organized so that you can be efficient, isn't it? Yeah. I'm in the same phase of trying to learn all of that and do that with recap, because it's as I always say to people, like I can bring all of the drive and the ambition and the passion and everything, but the logistics of running a company and getting everything efficiently done, I'm learning as I go. But transferable skills from all the times of working in the classroom and things like that. We're bringing them all in, aren't we?
Bring it on. Absolutely.
Amazing. So just to finish up, because Recap is all about embracing everyone, making everyone feel at home and part of our supportive community, I ask all guests to have a think of a piece of advice or an empowering message that they can share with the listeners to just share that love and support. So if you could say just one thing that could help even just one person, what is it that you'd like to say?
I would like to say that we should all be grateful that you slipped through the hands of people who had no idea how to hold you.
Oh. That's beautiful. Thank you. Rachel, thank you so much for coming on and speaking to us and telling us about the amazing things that you do. I can't wait to have you back and hear about all of your travels and how Edify continues to go on the social mission that it's on, because it sounds incredible. And if there's anything that we can do in terms of sharing information so that people can work with you or help build towards the mission that you're on, then absolutely just reach out and let us know, because we would be happy to support.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. Thank you.